All right, so Candace Owens was recently discussing with Piers Morgan about the war with Iran and also how she would rather see her sons go to jail than go to war. So, I'm going to be very clear on this. I served in the Marine Corps. I did 2 tours in Iraq, and I said this on JB's show, and I think I've said this on a few other people's shows here too. Look, the war in Iraq, there were no weapons of mass destruction. When I was a young man, when I was a kid, I just graduated from high school. I had no prospects. I didn't know what to do with my life. I don't think I would be the man I am right now hosting this show were it not for my experience in the Marine Corps. However, I'm going to say this to people right here, right now. The United States does not need to be involved in any of these wars in the Middle East. That goes from 2001, when the war on terror started, all the way up until God knows when it's going to end. And I don't know if I'm ever going to have a Mrs. Cabello of my own and little Cabellos along the way. But I don't want to see them in war. I don't want to see them in any war. I want everyone in the world to live beautiful lives. And that's why I had my mother write a message of peace in the Hiroshima Peace Museum yesterday. But I agree with Candace Owens here. It's madness for this war in Iran to continue on. Now, right now, it looks like there's a ceasefire holding. I pray it holds. Oh, nobody wants that to work more than I do, okay? Even those Trump supporters say, yes, Trump deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. No, I'm going to push those bastards out of the way. No. I want there to be peace, okay? I don't want the world to be vaporized in atomic fire. So I want to pull up this video here where she's on Piers Morgan's show. Do you bloody well condemn Hamas? Do you bloody well condemn it? So let's go ahead and play just a few highlights of this because I find it fascinating. And I think it really says a lot about the falling apart of the MAGA influencers because there seems to be a civil war without end, possibly. Don't worry. I saw it before with the left.
I do believe that if war in Iran is on the agenda, and that appears so, get dishonorably discharged. Who cares? Who cares?
Dishonorably discharged comes with a lot of problems. Okay? I myself was honorably discharged. Dishonorably discharged has a lot of price, has a huge price tag on it. I'd be careful with it because it could also involve jail time. Serious stuff, man. Serious stuff.
Why should you go die in a foreign land? You now have the benefit of 2020. You can see, think about those men and those women who died because they were pitched that they were serving their country because there were weapons of mass destruction, right? They were serving their country because the Taliban, they were serving their country, whatever, and these people gave up their lives. And ask yourselves, for what? And the answer to that question is for the elites. They're like toy soldiers.
When you said that, were you aware of the repercussions if people dishonorably discharged?
So,
well, we've heard people on the left say even huge controversial things there as well, like Hassan Piker or Cenk Uygur or Sammy Boy Cedar or anybody else, you know? I mean, everyone said something controversial. What Candace Owens said, I mean, yeah, it might trigger some people. It might upset some people. I find it fascinating that this is coming from the right. And it's an interesting case study of seeing just how Donald Trump has fractured his voting base, thus separating those that seem to be pro-war and those who are anti-war, especially those who are libertarians as well, siding with the anti-war.
Just to put this into context, this is like the Q&A, live Q&A portion at the end of my show. And being facetious, but also being completely honest, that they should begin to consider, and that was somebody asking, what should we do? Like, should we leave the military? Because they also
do you regret
are recognizing that? No, I don't regret saying that. I don't
But you
regret
know the
having
repercussions if you do discharge dishonorably.
Okay, well, I would imagine that the people that are in the military who were going to, if they were going to listen to my podcast and they were going to dishonorably discharge, that they would know the consequences. So it's completely ridiculous. And again, we see this over and over again where people can't answer the broader questions. They try to suddenly peg in, well, you said this one thing. No, the broader conversation that we are having.
Candace, it's not a small thing.
No, let me finish. Let me finish.
You're basically you're encouraging
Piers,
U.S. servicemen and women to dishonorably discharge.
You play a clip and I'm trying to answer it. You know, you can't do that. You asked a question.
Well, you're trying to
you played a
downplay
clip,
it.
and I'm responding. No, I am. No, you're trying to upplay it. Is what the issue is. This is exactly.
I'm just repeating what you said.
No, you're not. You're playing what I said, and I'm responding to it and telling you that the.
It's a Coca-Cola classic Piers Morgan move. Let's rewind that a little bit. I'll keep my pausing to a minimum. My apologies.
This is exactly.
I'm just repeating what you said.
No, you're not. You're playing what I said, and I'm responding to it and telling you that the broader piece of that conversation, when you have troops that are now asking that question, is they are recognizing that America is in steep decline, that our military comes back and they are treated like dirt, that a lot of these men, and we're talking about decades, white American males come back and they're told that they're racist and they're treated like crap, that they're white supremacists, that they have a different vision for this country. So why are they dying in these overseas wars for Bibi Netanyahu? Okay, and let me again try to answer that question that I asked you at the beginning, which is, what has Zionism won America?
I'm not going
what
to keep
have
coming
these
back to the same thing.
No, let me finish. Why won't you let me answer that? Why won't you let me actually say what people are recognizing? You come back and there are open borders and you're told that you are racist. Okay. You come back and you're told that you are racist if you don't want open borders. Meanwhile, you're sent overseas to defend Israel's borders. It's a nonsense. And who's funding these open borders? According to Barry Weiss, and I quote, Barry Weiss said this verbatim: the Jewish connection to the refugee is not a conspiracy. That's something that we are very proud of. And she was referencing the organization HIAS, and she says it explicitly, which she said what was started by them in the 1880s, which includes immigrants that have come in like Sergey Brin. They are still the organization that is operating at our border right now, okay? That is problematic, that we have open borders while we continually and routinely are told that we have to defend somebody else's borders, okay? And again, these never-ending wars in the Middle East at the behest of Israel. Bibi Netanyahu is the one that called for Americans to invade Iraq, Libya, Syria, Afghanistan, and now...
And all of that turned out well. And there were no consequences whatsoever, no blowback, nothing to cost us, and it didn't cost us a single dime as well. Oh, wait, it did. Iraq was an absolute disaster because as soon as Saddam Hussein was removed, remember, the British Empire did carve up the Middle East after World War I. Because remember, the Ottoman Empire was the big dog in town until World War I ended and doesn't turn. The Ottoman Empire fell apart, and the French and British empires, mostly the British Empire, carved up that region up. And Iraq, well, it fell apart after Saddam was gone, because the only thing that kept Iraq together was a strong man. Oh, hold on. I nearly forget. Libya. Gaddafi. He complied with the U.S. getting rid of his nuclear program. And what happened to him? He died violently. Hillary Clinton said, we came, we saw, he died. And Libya, once a prosperous nation, and again, look, no such thing as perfect, because there isn't. But at least they didn't have open slave trade when Gaddafi was around. I'm not saying Gaddafi was a saint or an angel, but I think the alternative, Gaddafi not being around, it was pretty bad. And in turn, Libya is still suffering from that action to this very day. Afghanistan, well, the Taliban came back, electric boogaloo style. Syria, well, there's political instability there. Yes. And the only reason why we're there, as Donald Trump once said it during his first term, being fully open and transparent, not for democracy, not for freedom, not for liberty, not for restoring human rights. We're there for the oil. We're there for the money. We're there for the moolah.
Now Iran, and we've done it. We're told Israel can defend itself. Okay, but why do we have currently 2,000 troops that are in Syria under the guise of fighting ISIS? And like I said, we know Israel themselves fund terror-adjacent militants like they did to overthrow Assad. And we're done with the BS of, okay, well, they weren't really involved, Israel, in Afghanistan, because even when we fight those never-ending wars, Israel wins. Everybody knows that our boys were out there in Afghanistan guarding poppy fields, okay? And do you know what happened after we allegedly, quote unquote, lost in Afghanistan? What happened to all those poppy fields, those poppy flowers that our military was guarding? Well, the opioid crisis hit America via the Sackler family, who quite literally built the School of Medicine at Tel Aviv University. So we're just done.
And don't forget Johnson & Johnson. They gave us the Johnson right up the wazoo. There's a reason why there is an opioid crisis in the USA. I mean, come on. Come on, folks. It's almost as if they want us to be trained and subservient and reliant on some magic pills so that we obey and fall asleep. It is 2025 after all. According to the movie They Live, the corporations and entities will be in control. Just go to sleep. The almighty dollar is your commander.
Done. Okay. And there's no way that we're going to go backwards. We're not going to allow you guys to emotionally condition us to go, oh, well, we got to protect Israel because of the Holocaust. It is over. They're imparting a Holocaust. America would like off this crazy train.
Yes, off the crazy train. But of course, when asked about Trump, this is what she did respond back as well.
Are you done with Donald Trump, or could you see a way that you would end up perhaps voting for him? Oh, he can't run again, obviously, but would you support him publicly again?
So I want to be clear. I don't regret voting for Donald Trump above Kamala. I think he was the better candidate, certainly a better candidate above Joe Biden. But what I will say is that he's been a chronic disappointment. And I feel embarrassed that I told people to go vote for him because this wasn't going to happen and it is happening. But I just think that the picture of politics in America is going to look very differently because of his actions. So I don't know where we go from here. I really don't. But this is not the candidate that I voted for.
If it turns out that his instincts were right, that by doing what he did,
there is no. Listen, we've seen this story before. Here, speaking of the story, here we're going to talk about the story here, okay? Because apparently, the leader, the dear leader of Iran, made this statement. Iran's supreme leader declares victory over Israel and the USA. Oh my goodness gracious gracious. So Iranian supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei on Thursday congratulated his nation with what he called a victory over Israel and the United States following 12 days direct military hostilities. The confrontation began when Israel killed top Iranian commanders and launched strikes on its nuclear sites, and ensuing exchange of long-range attacks culminating in a U.S. intervention during which bunker-busting bombs were deployed on Iran's fortified Fordo facility and 2 other sites. However, as it stands right now, the Iranian government and even CNN and other media sources are saying that these strikes in Iran did nothing and it just halted the program a couple of months. That's going to trigger Donald Trump.
This is not the candidate that I voted for.
If it turns out that his instincts were right, that by doing what he did, it brings Iran to the negotiating table and they do a deal on their nuclear plans, would you admit that you were wrong in that circumstance?
Yeah. I will always admit when I'm wrong. Anybody that listens to my podcast knows that. It just so happens to be that, especially if I come on to the Piers Morgan show and I make some predictions, that it ends up that I'm right. So I'm feeling lucky, but I will of course admit I'm wrong if that is the result.
Yeah. Hey, seems reasonable. And of course, then one other video.
Under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, Article 90, dishonorable discharge can result in forfeiture of all pay and allowances up to 5 years confinement, which is a pretty heavy penalty to pay.
Yeah, I'd want my kids to go to jail before they fought for Israel. I'll say that honestly.
Okay.
I would.
Hey, no filter. No filter.
I have 3 sons, and I'm going to be honest with you, Piers. I'm glad you told me that consequence. I'd take that consequence any day to them being sent back over in a coffin because they died for Israel. So.
Okay, but I think the one thing you're missing,
opinion.
look, I come from a big military family, a lot of military in my family, and a lot of people fighting wars on behalf of the United States are not doing it because they think Bibi Netanyahu wants them to. They're doing it because
some of them do that, and they write into my show and I answer the question.
But many of them won't, and they might be offended by you suggesting that's the only reason they're doing it.
And they can watch your show, and they can be offended all they want, but I think it's more offensive the way that our military is treated, the veterans are treated, and the gaslighting that takes place when we're told that we have to defend everybody's borders. But
I actually think America treats its veterans better than almost any country in the world.
Okay. All right, let's talk about veteran care here, okay? There are many homeless veterans. There are many veterans who are still struggling to get their benefits, even now. The VA is having a hiring freeze. The VA is also dealing with its own struggles. Now, my experience with the Veterans Affairs has been, I'll say for the most part, been very good. All right? Very, very, very good. I have not had a negative experience at when I was at the hospital a few weeks ago, and I have not had a negative experience at all. But nationwide, there are many homeless veterans. There are many veterans dealing with post-traumatic stress syndrome. You know, veterans needing help with starting small businesses, legal issues, health care, dental care. I think a lot more can be given to veterans. I mean, there's a lot of money for the military industrial complex, but what about the veterans when they come home? They almost get less than 2 pennies. And I think that's unfair. So it's very interesting that Piers Morgan can say that. Why don't you talk to some U.S. veterans, okay? Talk to them about what they have to deal with. Talk about the veterans that are trying to help out other veterans, and there are plenty of veterans trying to do that. But he's coming from a point of privilege.
I mean, this has always been an open conversation, and I am just saying that if my boys were being drafted to fight this war in Iran, I would be like, you know what, honey, take the other option. And that's not because it's cowardice. It's because when you sign up for the military...
Okay, but I would say that the pilots...
you are pledging that you are doing something that is going to better your country.
Candace, so
and
far,
like I said, our country has been in steep decline since we have been part of this foreign policy, which is just whatever Israel wants.
Okay, you made that point, but what
So what's the big takeaway from this? Well, we all know right now that the entire political system is designed to continue on with these ridiculous forever wars as people are suffering, as men and women are put in these horrific situations. And Candace Owens, and I know some people are saying cancel Piers Morgan. No, we're not canceling Piers Morgan. We're not doing that. I believe in this. The First Amendment, free speech. Candace Owens has made her statement loud and clear. She doesn't want her sons to fight in a foreign war. And for that, that's fine. And she has made a statement to it that she would rather see her sons in jail than serve overseas or be involved in any war that, Israel would ask the United States to be involved in. Fine. That's the thing about the First Amendment. And I think right now what we're witnessing here is that there is a divide between the MAGA influencers. And, I've seen this before. I think it was fair enough that a lot of people in the left, especially Jimmy Dore, Dude Dissidents, INN, RBN, we were all telling a lot of these influencers like, hey, keep an eye on Trump. Because I know this feeling, when your political hero disappoints you, all right? I've said my feelings and my thoughts on Bernie Sanders and AOC and the squad and all these progressive jag-off bastards in the U.S. Senate and House and how they have failed to follow through. I mean, most notably, 2021 was that year. 2021 was a year in which everything should have been revealed. Forced to vote, March for Medicare for All, the 3-day General Strike Summit meeting. Where were all those progressive heavyweights to be seen? Where were they at? They were nowhere. What was Biden's excuse? The Senate parliamentarian, but yet AOC and Bernie said that he was exceeding expectations. Nobody was holding their feet to the fire because Biden was in office and the orange boogeyman was out. Now it's abundantly clear why Trump won, because Biden and the Democrats failed at every single aspect. Biden's brain was melting right before us. He wasn't mentally or physically fit, and Kamala Harris was an absolute epic disaster. And Trump coming in, of course, hey, it was an election cycle. And a lot of influencers jumped on board with the Trump train, especially with Donald Trump going on the record saying that he was going to be anti-war, ending the war in Ukraine, trying to end the war in the Middle East. Well, so far, he's failed in that aspect. Now, currently, there is a ceasefire, but the question is, for how long? I hope it lasts long. That's what I want. I want to see the ceasefire succeed. But Candace Owens is addressing something that is not seen or talked about too much. And very rarely is there talk about building a joint coalition with the right and the left and everyone, every generation, color, skin, religion, who wants to be anti-war. And I think we have to be serious about being full-on anti-war to stand up against these psychopathic politicians who are dragging us into these conflicts in the Middle East. I mean, we already see what's happening in Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, Iran now. I mean, this war doesn't seem to be ending anytime soon, and yet it should be noted that right now, even Netanyahu is being called out by his own people to face corruption charges. All right, yet, of course, this is what's happening, and I think many people who have influence in the media or on social media should be talking about this, should be addressing it. The fact that Netanyahu's being called out. Now, Netanyahu's corruption trial should be canceled. Donald Trump is saying that. U.S. President Donald Trump has called for an end to the corruption trial of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu days after Israel and Iran reached a ceasefire. But we need to ask ourselves, why is Netanyahu facing off against a corruption trial? Netanyahu's trial began in 2020, denies any wrongdoing in 3 separate cases involving charges of corruption and influence peddling. He is Israel's first sitting prime minister to take the stand as a criminal defendant. Under Israeli law, Netanyahu is not required to resign unless convicted by the Supreme Court. And what better way to distract people from their problems than having a wag the dog moment? Nothing like having a good old Coca-Cola Classic War to distract everyone and anything. What could go wrong?